Welcome back to episode 2 of the Matt and Ben podcast that still has a name to be named.
Yes, temporary name, Matt and Ben podcast. I love it.
So yeah, we want to talk about, this is also so weird with the labs. I'm like, give me a microphone to hold on to.
So, just hold on to your cup.
Yeah, so. We're doing probably the first ever live podcast. So it's like sick, dude.
Awesome.
But today we want to talk about what it feels like to screen your art and the importance of screening stuff that you've made.
Yeah.
And what it's like to like actually look at something on the screen and be like, holy shit, I made this.
For like film specifically, screening is such a huge thing, but I'd like to touch later on too, just about like sharing your art in general, like whether or not you're a painter or like a sculptor or something, to have like a gallery or like some kind of presentation where it's not just the person who made it, it's not just you or your crew that everyone gets to see. Yeah. But for us specifically, with like the 48.
Yeah, give some context to what we're talking about.
Yeah. So our last podcast, we mentioned that we had done a 48-hour film challenge. We had a part of the, we shot, edited, and wrote this short film over one weekend. We got the themes the Friday night and a bunch of prompts, had to use them in the film. Wrote it, shot it, edited. Sunday evening, we were all packaged up and done. And then there was a screening a couple weeks later where we actually got to, well, the rest of the cast and crew, I got to see the edit with the editor. But then everybody else got to actually see what work they put in a couple weeks later. So we all came back together, which was fantastic. And we screened with a group of, it was a screening group D was ours specifically.
Do you remember how many actual films were finished that day?
For films finished during the actual thing, there was 102 teams and 97 of them completed on time. And then for our screening, we watched 14 shorts, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
there's 14. And then there was, so there's 14 our evening, and then there was a few more the day before, and then continued after, but...
Yeah, that was a trip, man. That was probably the first time I've seen something on an actual theater screen. Mm-hmm. Besides like stuff we do for class, right? If we showed in a presentation, but like that was like an actual theater, like popcorn. Like it was. What was the theater called again? It was like downtown. It was a small theater in downtown Toronto.
Yeah, it was.
I think it's the Review Cinema.
It was the Review Cinema.
Troy's behind the camera, manning the camera. So shout out to Troy.
Yes, thank you. The Review Cinema, which that was a great spot. It was really nice. I really enjoyed having it there. Like able to get some drinks, popcorn, food, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was super cool. That was super cool.
Yeah.
And it's also like really cool to just be able to see, as far as quality, where were we at as a group. Like, I know we weren't the absolute worst film that was made that day, which was cool, but like, you know, it's something to strive for all the time. I think like we didn't unfortunately make it through to the final round.
Yeah,
but
it's the advanced.
We'll just keep trying. And one day when we actually do it, it's going to be so good because, you know, I was thinking about this the other day, is like, the first thing we made, if we made it to the finals and we won something, like...
What would we do after?
Exactly. It's like, where do we go from here? So like now we have this like little plot, you know, we got a little plot going. Yeah. We got a little anti-group. We're like, okay, we need to actually like make something that gets awarded.
Now there's like a more clear goal opposed to just like making a film, which we've been successful with doing twice now. Yeah. And again, from the first time with the edit not coming together as smoothly as the second time. So like, it's nice to show like improvement each time we go.
And just like know where we need to do. Yeah. Where do we need to go next?
And same with like the screening was super informative to see like other people's work. Cause again, like it's good not to get stuck too much in like your own bubble of like creating. Yeah. It's nice to like be in the zone when you want to be there, but you can't be ignorant to like what other people are able to put forward.
Yeah, because you don't know.
You don't know, exactly.
Know, right?
Same with, there was like one that I thought was just absolutely hysterical, but then by like, say like picture quality or like camera movement, there wasn't much to it, but it was one of the best films of the day just because it was like, they knew what they had and who they had, and they had a really interesting, engaging, funny little story. Yeah. I think it was the like Animals Anonymous or whatnot.
Yeah,
That one I enjoyed so
yeah.
much. It was
that
really
one was so
fun.
good. It's funny though, right? Because it's true, right? Like, story shines through always. And like, you can, again, shoot the best product, but if the story sucks, the story sucks.
Yeah, then why? Who's gonna watch it, right?
Yeah.
So
But no, it was super interesting to see everything, and yeah, just like good vibes. I remember just feeling like that was just a good vibe night, like for sure. But yeah,
yeah, it's nice to have a fast turnaround, especially with the 48 and then the screening like
Yeah.
a couple weeks
it
later.
definitely just levels the playing field too.
It
right?
levels the playing field, and then it's so nice to be able to have everyone there not working, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's a great group, and there's a fantastic camaraderie, like, on set while you're working, getting everything to come together. But then afterwards, you're able to kind of revel in what you've done,
Yeah.
which I think is super important to recognize your wins, and it's not all just work.
Yeah.
Like, again, we all love being on set, otherwise we wouldn't be there. But I think it's important to recognize, like, when you've done something well, or just when you've done something. I think that's even more.
Yeah, and it's like, it's an accomplishment alone to finish a film and have something submitted. Like, I just think the dream is always like, when we win something, it's going to be crazy.
Of
because it's like,
course.
we've had these little ups and downs and you know, bumps and valleys along the way. And it's just going to make it feel so much better.
Yeah.
And whether that takes, you know, 3 more films or 1 more or whatever it may be, like, when we actually have that moment, it's going to feel so good because we actually worked for it and we tried and we
Absolutely.
like, you know, we tried more than one time. And I'm
Yeah.
stoked that we're still doing this because, again, logistically, it's just a weekend.
Yeah, which
Like,
is,
for you guys to plan everything, of course, it's months and it's a lot of arranging, but
yeah.
we can have something finished in a weekend, which I find so cool. Like, it's just like, I don't know. I was telling Troy about this the other day. It's like, when I started January, I wrote a goal list for January. January 20, just turned 2022.
Yeah.
So January 1st, sorry. And I wrote 25 creative projects. And at that time, I had nothing booked other than like 1 single wedding.
Yeah.
And I'm probably at 30 projects finished now.
There you go.
Which is cool because it's just like, I can look back at the year and I can look back at my hard drive and be like, okay, this is all the projects that I've actually worked on and accumulated. But it's just like a matter of saying yes to stuff like this, right? It's like saying yes to a 48 and something small and doing these things and throughout the year that you know, you're trying to find the time to do, and then you just do them and you're like, thank God I did that. That was amazing.
Yeah, that's a huge one. Like, the longer I go between projects, the like, I have to be doing projects, even
Yeah.
if it's like, especially film, but then if not, to kind of go to like art in general. Like I said, like, I love to draw, and I just enjoy like doodling, whatnot, sketches, that kind of thing. And the more frequently I do that, it's nice to see. It's like going through the sketchbook, and you're like, oh yeah, that was good. Like, I
Yeah.
filled more pages,
Yeah.
and that makes me feel good. Even though like I enjoy the process, but like, and that comes. I want to touch on like sharing, like, my drawings, which
Yeah.
I don't do much because they're more or less for me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not trying to get them. I'm not trying to get into an art school. I'm not trying to get into a gallery or anything with them. I'm just looking to get better and enjoy the process.
Yeah.
Like, I follow a bunch of like other artists online and whatnot, and it's cool just to see their styles and then like try and make your own and have fun and just kind of bat around with it.
Yeah.
But I think there's a weird thing that happens when you show someone your art, especially if they're not seeking it out. Like, for the film festival, it's nice because like everybody that goes there is like, oh, I want to see the other people's work. I want to
Yeah.
see this. But then to try to like share a short film with your friends or like family when they're not
Yeah.
interested, you're like, hey, you want to watch my short film?
I know, you want to watch something I
You want to
made?
watch your short film? They're like, yeah, sure. They're like, that was great. You're like, it's 5 minutes. Yeah, watch it. It's like, that was 3 minutes ago. And then it's always disappointing. Same with like, I'm like, hey, I just drew this thing. You want to look at it? They're like, oh, that's cool. And I'm like, you like the shading I
Yeah,
did?
you
They're like,
noticed this little thing.
yeah, it's fine, whatever. And then every once in a while, you'll show something. You'll be like, oh, that was cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah.
And then it's like, ooh, that one gets it. Just
Yeah.
hits a little differently. You're
Yeah.
like, okay, it's not passive recognition. It's like you did a thing,
Yeah.
good job. But
Dude,
it's
I
like,
felt the same way when anytime I would show somebody Thief, even though like
yeah.
I didn't shoot that Troy shot.
Shout out to Hari and Troy.
Shout out to Harry and Troy. Yeah, I'm just like, hey, I worked on this thing that was cool. Watch. And like, yeah, everyone's like, whoa, this is professional.
It is.
Like they're almost like taken back. And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I'm not gonna try to show you shit work. Like,
Yeah.
there's gonna be shit work that I show, but like, for the most part, I try a little hard, you know. But I was thinking about one thing. I just slipped my mind, but yeah, we can come back to it if I think about it. But it was on the idea of what you're talking about, like sharing your art and yeah, I'll come back to it.
Sharing artwork and whether or not like does art have to be shared?
Yeah.
Is that like for the world to go around? You always hear.
Oh, I remember what I was gonna say.
Okay, go
Yeah.
go. You say your thing. I'll come back to this.
Yeah. It was, I saw a really cool page on TikTok where it was an art teacher teaching people how to draw really cool little just mini scenes. And they were like, they would start super rudimentary, like, okay, let's start with a square and then do a triangle. And then they would like add little fine lines and then it would come together like something kind of complex.
Okay.
But it was like teaching you the steps and it was super quick. I'll show you after, but it was like 30 seconds or a minute. And he's like, if you want to draw a sunset scene, it's not that hard. And I just thought it was really cool because, again, like with traditional paper to pencil art, it's people who are good are really good, right? So it's like
craziness.
fucking daunting. It's
Yeah.
like, how the hell did they get there? But it's because they started here. And like, you know, somebody showing me how to draw a face with squares, right? Like, okay, you do this, the square here and the square there, and then you have like symmetry, and then from there you do the details, which like was a way I never really thought about it before. Like, I just thought they were just like kind of just fucking freeballing it. And then they're like, no, it's actually pretty like regimented, and it's like, that's why I understand why a fine art class can be teachable. I was always confused on like how can they actually teach that course, and like what does the course actually look like, and what do the class day-to-day stuff look like? But yeah, I remember seeing that. I was like, damn.
It is fascinating because like art can so often be interpreted like that, like oh well, it's, you know, so personal and impressionistic, and you just have to be a naturally gifted artist to be able to make good art. But no, like I remember I took like art in high school, and they're like, okay, they're like, yeah, the edges of your lips are gonna meet the middle of your eye versus like your ear is gonna be larger than your entire like your eyes, nose, and mouth. I'm like, wait, what? They're like, yeah, your ear reaches down. I'm like, no, it doesn't. And then I try to draw it out. I'm like, oh my god, look at that. That measurement's pretty. That seemed like a thing. That looks a lot better now. And it's just like stuff like that. I was like, okay, wow. And like same with film, if you have like the right like tools behind you, and like you just have to go through the process, right? Like so many people you say they're like, oh, how do you make a movie? They're like, you just go for it and you will fail. But with that, now you're like, okay, now I know how to do it. Like so many like famous directors are like, I just made my first movie and it didn't like, maybe it's not even finished, it didn't complete or whatnot. But they're like, but that experience showed me the steps I had to take to get to be like better. And same with like time and experience. Talked about like really amazing pencil artists where they can do like super surrealism where you're like, wow, how is that not like a black and white photograph? But then they're like, this was me at 9, and you're like, okay, that's good. Like this is me at 10, this is me at 11. You see their like sketchbook over the years, and there's usually there's like a little jump that occurs. Oh man, I touched the mic. Anyway, there's a little jump that occurs when it's like, wow, like you've really learned a new step there, and then that's carried through, and it just gets better.
Yeah, it's just building blocks, right? It just kind of is foundation. You just build the foundation.
Yeah.
And even still, right? Like when I shoot running gun projects, like there's no specific story. They're just like, I'm just getting random coverage. Like I still struggle. I still sit there in front of the computer. I'm like, how the fuck do I make this a thing? And then you gotta like watch through footage, and like that's why I think like, again, watching somebody like Hari or Troy edit,
it's crazy.
It's crazy because it's just like, holy shit, this person's, their brain works in such a different way. You know, it's like, it's so fascinating that way.
Yeah. Like I remember asking Hari too, like he'd show me like tricks, whatnot, just to have shortcuts to edit. I'm like, where did you learn this?
I know.
And I'm like, when did you get, where did this come from? And he's like, practice, Ben. And just,
Yeah,
you know,
literally.
look it up. If
Yeah.
something's going slow, there's probably a faster way to do it. And I'm
Yes.
like, okay, sure.
Literally. Yeah, and it definitely speaks to something like doing something every day. And I was actually talking about this with somebody last night at work. Like, we're talking about the idea how, so anyways, I like the first episode's from October 24th or something, and I finally put it out because I got over the mental hurdle of like, fuck, this isn't good enough. I need to actually just like make it polished. But then I was like listening to a podcast on the way here the other day, because we were shooting content, me and Troy were shooting content on Monday. And I've been talking to him about the idea of like, because I'm attached to a product, I have to like, it's like the perfection is in me is like so like triggered, and I'm like, it has to be the best or I'm not gonna put it out. And it's just like, you're never gonna put out shit because you're gonna always find something wrong with it.
Yeah.
So I was just like, fuck it, I'm gonna put it out.
That's,
And then I put it out, and then people are like, whoa, that's so cool, you're doing a podcast. I'm like, this is something I shot like 2 months ago. So I was talking to this guy last night, and he was talking about how, yeah, I was just like kind of stoked that I put this out because we've been talking about it for a while. And again, I just mentioned that like photography and like skateboarding are the only two things that I've ever like continued to do. Skateboarding on a way more casual level for sure. But like photography is just something I've always just like tinkered with, and like, and then that always leads to video, and then video editing from there, and then, you know, thankfully filmmaking through the school. But yeah, like it's just funny how that's the one thing that I've kind of always stuck with, and it's been over 10 years since I've picked up my first camera, and well, it'll be 10 years in December actually, December 20.
oh, for real?
Yeah, so December, like Christmas 2012 is when I got my first camera. So it'll be almost 10 years, and it's just tinkering, and it's like, that's where, like me and Troy did a video where we looked at old footage, reviewed old footage. It's like an hour long, right? It's like an hour long of just like,
wow,
what the fuck is this that I just made, you know? So
Yeah.
it's like, it's funny though, because it's the same concept. It's like doing traditional art or whatever medium it looks like, right? It's like you start from such a rudimentary and small and like nice little place.
Yeah.
And then if you stick to it, you'll build something really cool, and that comes with anything really. It's like, again, I find so much inspiration through TikTok sometimes. I was watching this girl who was a DIY person,
Yeah.
and she was talking about how if she let fear get in the way of her first project, she would have never done her last project, which was renovating her entire bathroom just by herself. And she has no formal training. She just has learned as she goes. And I was like so inspired by that, because I'm like, fuck, it's so true. If you don't, like, the first steps are like, you can't get anywhere if you literally don't walk the first 3 steps.
Absolutely. And I think there's so much about that with like wanting to get better at something. Like, yeah, you can continue just with whatever information you have and just like keep pushing, but at a certain point you need to reach out. I think we've had a conversation about this before.
Yeah.
There was some kind of term that you had about like you're only gonna get like so much better, and then you'll start to plateau with the information you have.
Yeah, Dunning-Kruger effect.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then you think you've mastered it, and you're like, okay, like I'm so great. And then you learn something new, you feel terrible about it. You're like, wow, I know nothing. And then from that point of admitting that you don't have all the answers, you get better.
Yes.
And you push yourself for it.
I'm so glad you mentioned
that
the way it should be, because it's true. Like, it's perceived knowledge versus years of experience.
There we go.
So it's like a linear, there's perceived experience is on the X, and then Y is the years of experience. So it's like, when you first learn a skill, you don't realize how much there is to know. So you think you know everything, and then you go peak right away. And then you quickly come crashing down. Like, learning the guitar, right, is a good example for me. Is like, I downloaded the app Musician, and I was just like tinkering along with it last year. And it's just like, you hear these people just fucking shredding in songs, and you're like, this is incredible. And like, 'cause I listen to a ton of blues music, and it's like, these guys are just mind melters. And like, I'm like, okay, this is really hard, but like, maybe I can grasp it. I was never like blindly ignorant to just like, oh, it's easy. I was always like okay, there's some hardness to it.
Yeah.
But I was like, how much will I get right away?
Yeah.
But it's just like so confusing, dude.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely need to pick it up again because I got discouraged.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was like an hour a day for like maybe a month, and I was just kind of like tinkering. And you have to practice regularly because I forgot everything that I've learned already.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to kind of consistently do that.
It's so disappointing that like with art it's so easy to be discouraged.
Yeah.
Like particularly with art.
Because there's such highs and lows, man.
There's such
Like,
highs and lows, but it's so like perspective based.
yeah.
Where like you can have an amazing artist show their work at an art gallery and it'd be like, oh, okay, that's renowned, that's great. Actually, perfect example. I just saw this video the other day. There was this violinist,
Yeah.
this famous violinist, like first chair and all that. They were playing in the subway in like New York or something, and people
Yeah.
just walked by.
Yeah.
And they played one of the most like hardcore, difficult pieces of music that's
Yeah.
considered so acclaimed
Yeah.
and beautiful, and people walked by and didn't
Yeah,
care.
I've seen some of those
And
on-
then
on the
they're
internet
like,
too.
2 days earlier,
Yeah.
they were part of a full quartet or a full orchestra or whatnot.
Yeah.
And they're like, those seats are going for like hundreds or thousands of dollars
Yeah.
to watch this person play.
Yeah.
But it's like about knowing who your audience is
Yeah.
and when to share. Like we said
Yeah.
about like, oh, you want to watch my short film? And
Yeah.
people are like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. But then if you're in a festival and people be like, oh, wow, like they're
Yeah.
primed to accept and receive and be receptive to what you're trying to show them. Because art is so difficult in that way
Yeah.
where like,
And it's
Like-
like funny too because like if she played some generic fucking song, like she'd probably have a ton of people watching. And it's just like I think that's where the art can get into like the pompous space is like, oh, you don't know what this actually means, right? It's like but that's their own ignorance. Just let them have that. Let them just walk by because the people who appreciate it will stop. The
Yeah.
people who like truly know what you're doing will always recognize it. And it's not your like responsibility to educate people on what is good and what isn't good. Like it's perceived. If you want to teach a class, then that's your opportunity to do that. But I think you should just make the stuff that you want to make.
I think you have to make the stuff you want to make and have the courage and willingness to put it out there.
Yeah.
See, this is where I get a little dicey though, because like it's nice to be able to have art. Like I said, I'm not trying to do anything special with when I draw, so it is largely for me because it
Yeah.
makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Same with we mentioned last podcast about like singing in the shower.
Yeah.
Where it's like you sing because you enjoy singing, not because you're trying to get on, the next star, be the
Yeah.
next like on the radio, which for some people that's it. It's like, okay, I need to sing at this bar and then
Yeah.
get to a bigger bar and then move up and keep progressing in that way because there's a ladder that you're trying to climb.
Yeah.
In which case there's, a bit of a
But I think it
steps that
always
have to be
starts.
taken.
I hope it always starts in a more like kind and less. Like I was listening to this song by Tom Misch, and there was a little intro part of it, and he was talking about how he's always been. It was somebody else talking in the song, but it was a song by Tom Misch, and the person talking was talking about how he's always just gigged to gig, like he just
Yeah.
plays gigs to play gigs to play music with his friends.
Yeah.
He's like never worried about the money, and he's like, if you're worried about the money and that's your only driver, you'll fail in the space quicker. And I'm like, for people who, go on the Voice or whatever, I'm hoping they start from a more like beautiful perspective of like just wanting to play music, and then somebody in their family or friends, pushes them to do something like that, and
Yeah.
then that's how they actually get discovered. But I'm hoping it's from a more
Is that how
pure
you feel
place.
about film though? Like what?
Yeah, like
where did it start, and like how do you feel about your trajectory? Like, is your trajectory based off of like, I love art and love making films so much, I want to do that all the time, and someone's like, if you want to do that all the time, you have to get good, so they'll pay you for it?
Yeah.
Or is it like?
See,
where
that's
does
been the
that-
thing. Is like I and that's why I've always worked a second job, is because I know, I was having this conversation actually the other day, is like, serving and bartending is something that I haven't hated enough to quit fully, but I hate enough to realize that, and again, hate's such a strong word, but like I realize there's better. And for me, it's been like what feels the best. And like shit like this feels the best. And like doing stuff with Troy and Deadline, and like actually putting shit out there feels so fucking good. But I'm also like, I don't know, it's been something I've been struggling with, is because it's like, there is an argument to have where you're limiting your time. Like if somebody calls you for a random gig, you can't make it because you don't have the time off or whatever.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, you have to continue to do, like, if it was about the money, I would have stopped shooting photos years ago, because I like literally just started to get paid a couple of years ago, which is super fucking crazy still. And like big imposter syndrome vibes. But it's like, I don't know, I'm just like, at the end of the day, I just know that like it's free for me to do it on my terms.
Yeah.
And I can do it it's pretty low impact on your body, and it's like you can do it for pretty much the rest of your life. You know, and that's something that I've always found really interesting, is like, when I was growing up, I was always watching like skateboard editors and filmmakers and photographers, and they're always in like, you know, a lot of these guys are in their 50s now, and like still out there shooting skating and like shooting stuff, and it's so inspiring, because like I wrote down like 4 major things I want to do in my life forever. This podcast being one of them.
Yeah.
Volunteering with the Rambler Project podcast.
Yeah.
Doing YouTube content full time, and like some sort of income from YouTube and Deadline, and creative directing through Deadline, and then like shooting skateboarding photography. Because just like, I want to make really cool prints one day, and just like, I want to hook up with a local company and just be like, literally I'll volunteer.
Yeah.
And like, I think during the pandemic was an opportunity for me to reset and be like, okay, on paper you're taking on every project, because I did 45 projects that year. Wow. So I was like taking on every project I could with literally as low budgets as they would give me.
Yeah.
And I was just shooting everything. I was like doing the thing, but like it wasn't getting me anywhere.
No.
And I realized like, it's just because you're taking the projects and doing the thing doesn't mean it's going to feel good. Like, you have to focus on what actually feels good. Like, what are the projects that actually make you feel like you're alive? Like the 48, stuff like this. Like stuff where you feel like just so stoked. You're like, I fucking made this. Like, what the fuck is, you know what I mean? Like, those are the moments like where I've realized like, okay, this actually feels really cool. But yeah, that's how I feel, you know?
That's how you feel? No, it was good. I liked it. I moved pages. Oh, I wanted to ask, do you feel art has to be shown?
No. I don't know. The first thing I think of is like, there's a clip going around on the internet of this guy walking up the stairs, and then there's a trampoline, and he's falling to the trampoline and like coming back. He's like dancing.
Oh,
right?
yeah, I've seen this.
And I'm like, what the fuck is this? I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, in the best way possible. I'm like, I get it, but I'm like, what the fuck is this, man? Like, so I like went down the rabbit hole of the internet. I was like, watched. I'm like, okay, it came from this other thing, and it's like this artist who like does this. This is his thing. And there was a couple of really cool ones where like there was one that was spinning on a stage. Yeah. And then they were all dancing and stepping off the spinning thing and then stepping back to the floor and like make fun of me for not knowing. But like, I was just like, what is this? I was like, this is what art, I was like, this is why people think art is so weird. But then because it is, but it's also like, it's fine, you know? But anyways, I was like, sure, there's an audience for that, but I'm like, if you don't necessarily need to show people that.
But if there's an audience, why not?
That's true.
So
where were we?
We were talking about insane art. You're just saying how weird brain
does everything need to be shown?
Yeah. And
I don't necessarily agree.
And
but then I'm also like, who fucking cares? If you want to show it, show it.
Exactly. Like, I've seen lots of like really strange modern art that'd be considered like, oh, you know, it's like one slab of paint on a canvas.
Yeah,
this is
stuff like that. I'm like, what?
And then it's like it comes back to, it's like, what does it mean to the person like interpreting the art?
So then I'll hit you with this then. Is
Sure.
this, so people who sell that style of art,
Yeah.
is this more for selling to the consumer who's like gonna feel something, or did that artist feel something in that moment? You know what I mean? Like,
Okay. I'm super fascinated with this because one, let's say this is about misinterpreting art.
yeah,
So let's say the artist goes into it with like this abstract thing, or they're trying to get out anger, let's say, and they use a bunch of reds and oranges or whatever. They throw and they're throwing it at the paint canvas, and that's how they're expressing themselves and get it out of the. And they're like, that was a really therapeutic experience for them.
Yeah.
So that was like their breakup, whatever, and they've poured it into the piece.
that's exactly where
And
my
they're
brain
like-
went
and
to.
they're like, okay,
breakup. This
cool.
guy just got a
They're
breakup
like,
text,
cool.
and he's like,
So they-
fuck!
So
He's
they,
in the
they
studio,
poured
you know?
their
Like,
art into this, and they're like, done. And then they go to sell it, and then whatever art critic or whatnot, somebody's at the art gallery, like, and they see it, they're like, oh, this is a depiction of love and beauty, of the reds and the oranges and the yellows.
Yeah.
So like, this is like the warmest sensation I've ever felt in my life.
Mm.
And then they take it into their home and they have it up as something that makes them feel good.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, when the artist looks at it, they're just reminded of the pain they felt at that time.
Yeah.
But also the like catharsism of getting it out, to be like, all right, there we go, I feel better. Like, that was a difficult period of my time, like of my life, but now it's past. I'm glad I got that. And it's like, and I got paid for it too. Great. But then,
I know, I wonder,
but then
right?
it's a weird.
But then you look at people like Banksy, right, who like literally shredded his art on auction, like, which is
So-
like interesting, right? Because I don't know, I wonder how much of a choice it is for the artist to be like gone to like a huge auction. I wonder how much of a choice that is. I wonder if there's obviously logistics involved with agents and being like, okay, well, this is what we're going to sell your art for, and then they're like, well, fuck you, I don't want to sell it. I think that's the case for a lot of people. And like, I'm blanking on the famous painter, but who got famous after he died.
Van Gogh?
Yeah.
I was lost them. Yeah.
Yeah, like, that's, I was like, it can't be that obvious of an example. I was like, this is definitely not that guy, but it's got to be that guy. Yeah, but anyways, it's like, could you imagine, right? Could you fucking imagine? You spend your entire life making shit, and then somebody just finds it, and they're like, holy shit.
I think about that a lot. I was actually thinking about that because there's some show, I can't remember right now, show or film where they, like, time travel's involved, and they bring Van Gogh to see his, like, an art gallery of his work. And they're like, this is crazy because he makes all this art. Again, I don't know his entire story that well. I know there's a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah.
Please correct me.
Yes.
But like,
Go to the comments.
yeah, exactly.
Rip us alive.
But it's fascinating to have like such a difficult life without any like true recognition that like, it's received today. And
Because then for him, that was just pure, right? That was pure creating.
yeah, and
Because he had no explanation or no expectation of putting it out or anybody seeing it, really.
Yeah.
So that was like,
and it's fascinating too about you think about, I can't remember, I think it was like Epictetus, I can't recall who was discussing it, but they're talking about Alexander the Great. They're like, oh, wouldn't that be amazing to still have people saying your name thousands of years after you die? And they're like, is it though? Because it doesn't mean anything to you, you're dead.
yeah.
So it's
yeah,
like-
yeah, I see
Like,
that. Yeah.
it's interesting in that sense where it's like, wow, so renowned. Like, I want my name to be remembered for generations. It's
Yeah.
like, you won't ever know if that's the case.
Yeah, you'll never know. Like,
So
that's crazy.
it's about like what impact.
Same with music too,
Same
though.
with music. Same
Music's
with,
like a huge example.
yeah, like for a lot of the like rock stars who are still around, or like they're like, oh my god, like the 80s is such like a peak for music and whatnot.
Yeah.
But then, because that music is still like held up and people still listening to it, like it's
Yeah,
still
like Amy
satisfying.
Winehouse, Jim Morrison, anybody from the 27 Club, like Kendrick's, like it's
So it's
crazy, man.
it's fascinating in that sense, but it's so bizarre that, again, about like interpreting art and having it shown or shared with people, that sometimes when you do share your art, either you're not sharing it with the right like crowd or demographic, that how do you guarantee that it's going to be seen by the right people who are going to appreciate it in a way that you feel is correct, or a way that feels like just to what you've put into it?
Yeah.
And the opposite too, like it's funny you hear stories about people like, oh, I did that on a whim and that was the best song, or that was something we didn't care about, or that was
Yeah.
a film I just, didn't think much of. Or same with actors, where they get famous off like one line or
Yeah.
one role, where they're like,
Yeah,
people-
Matthew McConaughey.
yeah, they're like,
saying,
all right, all
Yeah.
right, all right. Where they're like, yeah,
And then
that was nothing, but
the-
now it's such a defining thing.
Yeah, the line in
It's-
Dazed and Confused where he says, every year I'm getting older, but they're still 18. Like, that was improv line. That was an improv line.
It's like,
And he talks about it in his book, and like he was just like known as the fucking guy. And same with the chest pounding moment in Wolf of Wall Street.
Wolf
That
of
was
Wall Street.
improv.
Exactly. So much like that happens so often, whether it's like the best line in the movie is the improv.
And that's
line,
just
or-
somebody like being so pure to their craft. That's so it's like, yeah, it's like there's a saying. It's like, oh fuck, what is it? It's like when opportunity meets.
preparation plus
Yeah.
opportunity equals
Yes,
what was
something like that.
luck. I
Yeah.
think it's luck. They're like, oh, you're just lucky. They're like, oh,
Yeah,
a
it's
man
when-
lucked out. Like,
Yes.
oh, but it's not that. It's like I was preparing this whole time, and then opportunity came, so I was able to
Yeah.
present or share, and that's what makes it look like, oh, I just got lucky break. Because I say that about Hari.
Yeah.
Brilliant man.
Yeah.
Always working, and it's like, how did he happen to have his job come to the city that he's in? And you're
Yeah.
like, that guy's so lucky. But again, he's like,
Yeah, opportunity meets preparation.
yeah.
But it's funny, stupid example. I was at the bar and I was teaching somebody how to make a whiskey sour. And you can make them pretty if you try, right? And I've always messed around with trying to make little art on top of the froth.
Okay.
And the one fucking time I'm showing somebody how to do it, I make literally the prettiest one I've ever made.
Yeah.
And I just like winged it so hard. I was like, I'm going to try this thing that I've never tried before. And I did it, and it was so pretty. I made like 3 little hearts around the glass.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, inside, I was like, this is the moment. I was like, this is the opportunity meets preparation meets luck. And they're just like, wow, that was really good. And I'm like, yeah, I know.
Yeah, exactly.
It was so funny, dude.
I had
Oh,
a
it was so
similar
funny.
thing. It was crazy. I had a job interview not long ago, and I brought up, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like, again, taking this job, I need to pay bills and that kind of thing, but I'm also a film guy.
Yeah, good
and
for
then
you, man.
just
Good
so
for you.
happened that they came up and they're like, oh, film guy. So they're like, all right, what do you think about like Wes Anderson movies? Why do I like them so much?
Cool.
Wes Anderson's like one of my main favorite directors.
Yeah, dude.
So I know a lot about him and
Yeah.
like Robert Yeoman and just how they film and like everything about it. So then I went through and I was explaining all this stuff. He's like, yeah, cool. And he's like, all right, another one for you. Marvel movies, are they good?
You're
and
like-
I was like, you just asked me the two
You're
things
checking the boxes,
I know
man.
the most about in this realm. And I'm like, I talked so fast and it was so clean.
That's
and
unreal.
he's like, wow, you've got a good scope. Because it goes from a more like artsy, filmic type thing to a more crowd-pleasing
Yeah.
like genre. And it was like, wow, I seem so well-rounded.
Yeah.
I seem so well-spoken
Just like,
at this
yes,
moment.
it ain't nothing.
But I'm
It
like,
ain't nothing.
how are you asking these two perfect questions? But that's it. It's like, this is what I spend my time thinking about and preparing and
Yeah.
thinking over. And then just that moment that happened, it's like opportunity to
Yeah.
share and to look good in that moment. And it's like, here we go. Nice.
Yeah.
But it was a strange sensation to be like, again, the imposter syndrome.
Yeah,
of
it's kinda like you gotta,
Do
like-
I say it's like, well, you don't want to diminish what you've done, even though it's like, well,
Yeah.
this is what I'm best at, or it's like putting your best foot forward is amazing, but then it's like, how do I back this up a lot of the time? Same with if you come out with like an amazing first film,
Yeah.
or like the first shot of the day is you're like, oh, that's so crispy. You feel
Yeah.
the push to maintain that level, which can be strange, especially if you start strong. Like, I remember in college, like making films, and the first couple I did were really strong. And then the second half, when I was making them, some of them weren't as strong. And that was really difficult mentally to be
Yeah,
like,
because it feels like backwards
it
progress.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Because I was trying new things, but it didn't yield the same like
But the peaks,
result in the
you got to
end.
remember though, like and I've gone through the same struggles with my shit. It's like feeling like, again, it's just imposter syndrome, man. It's like I'm looking at a photo set, I'm looking at an edit and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? I'm like, did I forget how to make something?
Yeah,
You know?
no, it's true. You're like,
But it's like
what
the peaks and
happened?
valleys are low, right? Like you don't know how far they're gonna go, and you
Mm-hmm.
don't know how high the valleys are gonna go. Like the peaks are gonna go.
Yeah.
So it's like you could kind of work down and work backwards, and then just skyrocket on the next one. Like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you never really know.
And that's the scary thing, and why. And both of those times, it was in the viewing and sharing with other people, was when I really got a good sense of how I felt when other people were watching it.
Yeah.
And again, that's
I got
one of
the
those
chills. I just got
weird
the chills.
things about
That's
like,
the most important thing, is because it's way bigger than an ego check. Like you have to do those moments to realize, like, number one, how does this fit into a general audience? Number two, like, how does it feel to actually see people laugh at the jokes, or like cry at the moments, or gasp at the moments, and you're like, oh,
it's
you know?
interesting, but there's something to be said too about, there's like an old SNL story about these two guys who, like, they would write jokes for each other and they would laugh so hard they'd
Yeah.
pitch it to everybody else, like, I don't know guys, like, I don't know if it's gonna land. They're like, no, it's gonna land, it's super funny, it's super funny.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'd go up and it would land, the whole house would erupt and they're like, wow, it was a great joke.
Yeah.
And other days they'd deliver the line and the
Yeah.
only person laughing would be his friend in the rafters,
Yeah.
in tears.
Yeah.
And they'd come off stage and be like, it's still great. I still think it's good because the two of us got what we wanted out of it.
Yeah.
Even though other people didn't,
You know, and like,
respect or, appreciate it the way they did, but it was for them. It wasn't, it's a bonus. Okay. There was, there's this term, I can't remember what it's called, but it's about, it's a good way to seek a profession. When what you do is for you, you get something out of it, and the result is for like the betterment of all.
yes.
And I can't remember what the term is.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's
I've heard
like,
that before.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
like if you enjoy cooking,
Yeah.
you like the actual motion of cooking and going through it.
Yeah.
And then the result is you have amazing food to share with people. And they're like, that is a beautiful relationship to
Yeah.
have with everything, particularly art, where it's like, okay, I like.
And you have to submit yourself to it. You have to, there comes a point where you realize, okay, maybe I'm not as good as I think, or maybe this is just a hobby, and maybe this is just something I need to just do in my spare time.
Yeah.
And then if you keep doing, that's when something happens. It's when you get too fucking, like, in your own head about it, and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna market it because I haven't found the right audience. Like, it's like, no, just continue to do it, and then the audience will always come. And that's why I think, like, stand-up is really interesting, because touring comedians, right, will play show. I wonder how much variance there is show to show. Like, I've seen music done that way, and it's the same set every time.
Yeah.
I think there's different jokes throughout the set, but I think generally the material is pretty, I feel like it's pretty conducive to flowing the same sort of ways.
Because again, it's
But
it's scripted, so you have an
it's
idea
so-
of like what's gonna happen.
Yeah, it's so different. Like, the comedians I listen to all the time talk about how they'll play some shows and some of the jokes will absolutely murder at this one place, and then they'll say the exact same joke in, like, maybe a more conservative town, or maybe they're talking about the States, and, like, maybe more blue state, and it's just like, they just don't get it. Like, they just don't find it funny,
But and that's the crazy thing with art, right? Like, you can have, like we were talking
But
about.
who
the
decides
painting.
whether that's a good joke?
That's where you have to enjoy it yourself, right?
Yeah.
You have to think it's a good joke.
Yeah.
And enjoy saying it, and then if other people like it, there you go. You've put
Yeah,
some
that's
good out.
that's the compliment back to you, right?
Yeah.
It's never doing it for somebody. It's,
No, it has to be for you.
Yeah. And then the compliment is getting a paycheck, getting a
Yeah.
laugh, getting
Yeah.
a finished plate, getting a smoked cocktail, like
Yeah.
someone just slams it and you're like, that was the greatest thing I've ever tried.
Yeah.
Like last night I had a really nice martini last night that I've never tried. I don't drink martinis, and I was like, okay, some guy bought us a round of martinis at work. And I had a vodka martini with a twist, with a little vermouth, which I was just like, fucking, who orders martinis? So I like tried it, and I was like, This is awesome. This is perfect, dude. This is great.
That's why people order martinis.
Yeah, I was like, I understand now. I understand. I'm educated now.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it was funny. It was just like that little moment. But it was like the person making it got the compliment. I told him, I was like, this is a really good martini. And he tried it himself. He's like, okay, this is what they should kind of taste like. And we tried 2 other ones, and it was just like, not it.
It's so interesting, especially when we're going to, like, if people don't recognize your work, especially if it's like your best work or whatnot. I think about the story of Charlie Cox, who was in the most recent like Spider-Man film.
Yeah.
And apparently, like, for most screenings, when he came on screen, the theater erupted like, oh my God, he's here! This is amazing! We love that guy.
Yeah.
And then he was told about this by like a friend or a cousin or something, and he's like, okay, I'll sneak into a theater. Like, that would be nice to experience. That'd be kind of an interesting thing to see. Even though, again, he's already made it, already put the work, already enjoyed doing that.
Yeah.
But it's a nice like compliment to have. And then he said he went, and he's like, dead. Bone dry theater, not a sound, not a peep. And he's like, incredibly humbling, because it's when you're seeking out that like, oh, am I gonna go for this extra thanks right now?
Yeah.
It's like, do you need it? Do you want it? And then
when you're chasing, it's gonna just keep running from you. You know, like, it's not
to knock either. I would absolutely exact same thing. I would have been there, exact same thing, because it's like, okay, especially if you've heard already this positivity around your work, where it's like, wow, you've done a really good job. To like, you should, like we said about our screening, it's like, okay, we've done a good job. We appreciate what we've done. It would be nice to feel the good energy and good vibes with other people. Yeah. And then it's disorienting if it's not what you expect, or if, let's say...
But I think even still, like, you should... I don't know, it's interesting, right? Because, like, if you're only listening to the praise of the audience and the praise of the viewer, you might be inflated. Like, that's where people get inflated,
for
right?
sure. And
I think there was a lot of room for improvement on our short.
Absolutely not saying.
And I think it's important for us as a group to stay very close to ground.
Absolutely.
People are gonna, because you don't know what the fuck they've seen in their life. That's could be the first short film they've ever seen. They're like, this is the greatest thing ever. So it's like, it's trusting your peers to tell you, hey, this is shit, or this is like, okay, this is okay.
Yeah.
You know, and like, I'm thankful for the group of people that I have in my life that have always kind of kept me grounded. And and I talk to this with my friend Dan all the time. It's like, I was always afraid to start this podcast and to put shit out on the internet because I was like, who fucking cares? And then I'm like, who cares what I have to say? But then also, who cares? Just fucking do it. Like, the people, exactly. Do it for yourself, and then the people like who actually appreciate your stuff will find you and reach out to you. And like, I got some cool feedback on the first one we did, and it was like, okay. All right.
I have like my old group of friends, my oldest group of friends, let's say, is wildly critical of everything I do. And it's incredibly grounding. Yeah. Because like podcasts came out to like, first frame was weird, and I'm like, thanks, I'm aware. And that was the only thing they said to me. Not good job, you did a podcast. Like, what's with the bad frame? I'm like, I love thank you.
Dude, I agree.
And it was like, and then same with like the film. I'm usually my harshest critic about like, wow, there's so much room, there's so many things I still need to do. Even with the last film, it's about respecting what you've done and recognizing there's more work work to do. And it's a difficult balance to find. Yeah, that's especially hard. When you get right? like external information, because you can have people say, your movie was horrible, it totally bombed, and you're like, you know, there were segments of it that I recognize, I hear in your complaints, but I think the other core of it was still really good. Yeah. And then sometimes that's it, and the movie still is considered a bomb and not good. Yeah. And then they'll make the next one or whatever, and it gets better. Or it settles for a bit and becomes a cult classic. Same with music, where it's not well received at the beginning, and it's criticism, and you're like, I still feel like something's good in there. Yeah. And it's like, whatever. If you guys aren't, they're like, I'm still happy I made it.
Yeah, and the time is fucking endless, right?
Yeah,
Like,
and it's
you never
it's a
know how
weird-
many people will end up seeing your stuff, and then somebody out there is gonna resonate.
And that's the hope, though, but also the fear. Like, as artists, we always have to. I don't know. I don't want to like destroy this idea because it's like, I hope that people come and get to see our work and get to appreciate it the way
Yeah.
that we love and we want it to be received
Yeah.
from like what we've put into it. But then the possibility always is there that that we could be the Van Gogh and just be super arrogant and be like, but the possibility is that people won't
It's true.
see it at the time and won't respect it.
Yeah.
Maybe while we're here or ever.
Yeah.
That it's like, wow, that was a remarkable artist.
And that's not your responsibility.
And that's
which
not
is
your
so
responsibility. It's
fucking
so
cool.
weird.
It's so cool, but it's also like so weird because it's like what people think of your shit doesn't matter.
No.
Like it's what you think of your
Yeah, because you can have
your
like
stuff.
the greatest artist in the world. Like they could be the most amazing, prolific painter ever, but they wouldn't be prolific if they're only in their basement. They never show their work. They just paint in their one room, and that's it.
But the
It
act
never...
of starting is always because they want to. Which
Exactly,
is so
because they get a
fascinating.
passion from painting and they love
Yeah.
it. And sure, maybe they'll go to art galleries and like seek inspiration or whatever, and they're always progressing and always getting better. And they die and they're like, okay, cool. They die an old woman and they're like, all right, I've made the most amazing paintings ever. And they're like, cool, nothing's to be said. She said to burn them at the end.
Yeah.
And that's it. And no one gets to see it.
Yeah.
It's like, what an interesting life. Like, let's say she enjoyed it. She lived a passionate life and enjoyed her paintings, but they would have been amazing to the world.
Yeah.
But then it didn't get to happen.
It's funny, like Chris
weird...
Stapleton has a little interview clip on, he was like being interviewed on a talk show or whatever, and he was just talking about how the interviewer asked him, do you know a song is going to be a hit before it becomes a hit? And he said something along the lines of like, no, you never know what's going to be received. And he said people who think they have an idea are full of shit. And I was just like, that's so refreshing. That's so
nice.
refreshing. Like,
It's
thank
nice.
you. And also like, he's a certified shredder. So like,
Yeah.
I respect his opinion, you know? Like,
Yeah.
but for him to have that kind of humbling of an attitude, considering the music he makes, is just that much more inspiring.
Yeah. I think it's really easy to look to people who are like ultra successful. And I think
Keanu
it's
Reeves,
helpful.
bro. Keanu Reeves. Homie's just chill. He's just vibing.
chilling.
He's just vibing on the subway.
And it's awesome. Like I appreciate that. And same with what you're saying about like, if you're consistently receiving praise,
Yeah.
is that a good thing?
No.
And unless you have like an offset, I think that's required to keep you balanced. If people,
And I
are
think
like,
that's where your peers come in handy,
I think
right?
so, and
Because they've known you before and after, right? Like before success and after success,
Yeah.
like in the mainstream. Like
Yeah.
somebody, I forget who I was listening to as well, but somebody was talking about their mom. Like they'll call their mom anytime they think something's good,
Yeah.
and then their mom will just be like, it's
Yeah.
not the best. And they're like,
Yeah.
all right,
I love-
all right.
again,
Thanks, mom.
I'm always like, my Marvel thoughts go, and I like Stan Lee before he died, go to conventions, be amazing. And he said in an interview before he died that he's like, I love coming here. He's like, because I feel like a superhero when I'm here. He's like,
Super
they're
cool.
like, yeah. And he's
Yeah.
like, when I go home, I get there and my wife Joan's like, all right, Stan, take out the trash.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, cool, all right. He's like, I just had thousands of people cheering my name, saying how much they love me, and I get home and it's like, oh yeah, we need to do the compost. All right.
Yeah.
It's like, get out there. It's still,
Yeah.
and again, it's super humbling to
I love
hear.
it.
And same with actors who have like regular spouses.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, no, they're like, husband's a teacher, or wife's,
Yeah.
you know, like
Yeah.
a nurse. Like I go home and it's life as usual. It's like,
Yeah.
all right, got to take my kids to soccer practice. I got to do this. Like, it's not like glamorous. Like, sure, you'll go to a red carpet and be cheered and loved. And then it's like, got to get home and you still need to be humbled somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I
man.
think that is often like where you see people end up in like tabloids or artists like have struggles when it's
because you just
not
get kind of
keeping
just
a balance, or you
they
get
li-
too big too fast.
you come
kind
off
of.
the planet, man. you
Yeah,
know?
well, it's hard not to because it's an unnatural thing. Like, sure,
Yeah.
we have the people around you where it's like, okay, this is going well, but then to have that amount of eyes, like, show up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Because same with, like, right now.
That's why Shia LaBeouf's the best. Like, he's fucking just
Fascinating guy.
literally method. Like, there was a clip that went viral on the internet where he was talking about, he was like smoking weed in the truck during a reading or something. Like, something internet was just like, what the hell's going on? It's because he was preparing for like this I forget what the movie's called, but it was kind of like a hard movie to watch. It was about a movie about a relationship between him and his wife in the movie, and then she was pregnant, and then he like left her. I don't know, it was just like a roller coaster of emotions all the time. But like, he lived in that truck because that's what the character drove in the truck,
Yeah.
like in the movie. And I was just like, I'll show you the movie when we're done here, but
It's
I forget the title. But it was, yeah, I don't know. It's just like cool when these guys like kind of they have such a strong pull to their own vision that like what the mainstream cares about or what the mainstream says doesn't even bother them. Like, that's super inspiring to me.
It's inspiring, but then there's also like, again, I think Shia LaBeouf is like a remarkable actor. I find him very interesting, both like from what I've heard about him and then also like as a performer, remarkable. But with that, like, I remember speaking Shia again when he did the movie Fury with Brad Pitt and Logan Lerman and many others. They're like, oh, okay. Like, apparently he ripped out his own tooth and didn't shower for months. And they're like, yeah, he stank on set. They're like, it was rough because he's like, no, we're in war. We wouldn't have showers. Like, we're in the trenches. Like,
Yeah,
we're in this
you can
tank.
obviously go too extreme, right?
So it's interesting of like, where do you draw the line? And that line is so personal.
Yeah.
Like I was about to say with, like, I have a bit of a balance between like people who are like, yes, we're doing good, let's keep going, let's keep moving, but also keep me in check. And then I have other people who are like, still crap, like, call me when it gets good. And it's like, wow, okay, thanks guys. So it's like those, well, not naysayers, but like the more negative people in my life keep me grounded. So the other people who get me really amped up and excited, and I'll get like full of myself, my head will start to get big of like, you know what? We've got this. I'm like, I'm so ready for this. And it's like, that was trash. It's like, all right, let's level back out. And then you take the time to personally reflect and make sure you know where you are and where you stand. But when you get to like fame or like recognition from a larger source or a larger like pool of people, and you have a bunch of people saying you're great, you start to maybe minimize the voices that are telling you no.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, these people have known you.
You just need to be able
to
know when to pull those voices, right? Like, but yeah, I think that leaves a good segue to the episode's Marvel Minute. So we'll reset and start back up.
Cool. My name is Ben T Murdock. This is going to be my Marvel Minute. It's December, close to Christmas, 2022. Yeah, let's go. So, Marvel came out with their second special presentation with Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Christmas Special, which is great. First Marvel project to not have a villain in it, which was really fun delight. Marvel MCU adjacent news, Spider-Verse trailer came out for Across the Spider-Verse, probably the most Spider-Man on screen ever, although animated, still be fantastic. First one won the animation Oscar, and this one likely will as well for next year. What else we got? Oh, for Phase 4 and 5, apparently Marvel's execs are considering re-evaluating their slate for how many projects came out in Phase 4, although it was nice to have all the content. People are worried about content fatigue and Marvel fatigue in general, so I think most fans are more interested in quality over quantity at this time, but we'll see where it goes. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania kicks off Phase 5 starting in February, and Wonder Man casting with Yahya Abdul-Mateen is coming out, and it'll be really good. That is my Marvel Minute. Here we go. Oh wow, I have more time.
Nice, dude.
Cool.
Sweet.
Yes.
Yeah, we just want to say thanks for listening, guys. This concludes episode 2 with Ben. Our next episode, we will have a guest, and we're going to try to scatter some guests in throughout. But again, I just want it to be a podcast where we talk about shit, and we talk about ideas, and we talk
Yeah.
about just things, and it doesn't necessarily have to be anything other than that. We'll bring some guests on, but definitely just keep an eye out on socials
Yeah.
for us posting more frequently. I'm gonna try to get a couple, starting once a month, and then I'll have some till around April or May when I get back, and then from there we'll try to pick things back up.
Yeah.
But,
And then for sure reach out and let us know if
Yeah.
you have
Any
things-
questions or comments or
questions or
suggestions?
yeah, anything you want to hear our opinion on.
Yeah.
That'd be
And if you
that'd
don't
be
want your
interesting.
opinion, that's also
Yeah,
fine.
that's
Just
also cool. Let
just
us know as well.
Let me know.
That'd be something. Yeah, no, it's I like having these conversations, and if other people listen, that's a plus.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks again. We'll see you on the next one.